From old sailing cutters to a revolutionary jet fighter, here are 7 interesting things that you might not know. If you're captivated by aircraft or fascinated by aviation history, chances are you're familiar with the renowned Skunk Works. Officially known as Lockheed Martin's Advanced Development Programs, the Skunk Works team is the driving force behind numerous aircraft designs, top-secret research and development initiatives, and cutting-edge exotic aircraft platforms. Its storied legacy began with the P-38 Lightning in 1939 and continued with groundbreaking contributions such as the P-80 Shooting Star, U-2 Dragon Lady, SR-71 Blackbird, F-117 Nighthawk, F-22 Raptor and F-35 Lightning II. The hallmark of Skunk Works? A commitment to unwavering secrecy that has become synonymous with its operations. So how did the intriguing moniker Skunk Works come into existence? The origin of the name goes back to a comic strip named Lil Abner that was popular in America in the 1940s and 1950s. The Skunk Works in Lil Abner referred to a secretive brewery located in a forest where toxic, foul-smelling skunk oil was brewed by grinding dead skunks, old shoes and other strange ingredients into a smouldering still for some mysterious and unspecified purpose. In 1943, the pioneering development of America's first jet fighter, the P-80, was led by the now famous design engineer Kelly Johnson. More on that later in the video. What's surprising is that this groundbreaking endeavour didn't unfold in a state-of-the-art facility, but rather within the unassuming confines of a circus tent adjacent to a foul-smelling plastics factory. Despite the important nature of this top-secret project, the tent was often saturated with the potent scent of harsh chemicals drifting in from the nearby factory. One day, engineer Irv Culver's phone rang, and in a moment of humour, he playfully answered it by saying, "Skunk Works, inside man Culver speaking." His fellow employees quickly adopted the name for their mysterious division of Lockheed, and eventually, Skunk Works became Skunk Works. As a result, the once informal nickname is now the registered trademark of the company. If I asked you how long it has been since the United States Coast Guard was founded, and why the service has a connection with Walt Disney, what would you say? So what do you think? How old is the US Coast Guard? 100 years? Maybe 150 years? Surely not 200 years. Well, it might surprise you to hear that it's actually the ripe old age of 233 years and counting. In fact, the US Coast Guard can actually trace its beginnings back to the aftermath of the American Revolutionary War, to a time when the new United States was, no pun intended, struggling to stay afloat financially. The nation was in debt and urgently required a substantial national income, leading the government to focus on import tariffs at US seaports. The prevalence of smuggling underscored the immediate necessity for robust enforcement of tariff laws. Responding to this imperative, on August 4, 1790, the United States Congress, influenced by the advocacy of Secretary of the Treasury Alexander Hamilton, established the Revenue Marine, which operated a fleet of small, fast and armed vessels. As time progressed, by the 1860s the service evolved into the US Revenue Cutter Service, and on January 28, 1915, the contemporary US Coast Guard came into existence through the amalgamation of the US Revenue Cutter Service and the US Life Saving Service, which was a civilian organisation that rescued shipwrecked mariners. In 1939, the US Lighthouse Service followed suit and was also merged into the US Coast Guard. Consequently, the US Coast Guard safeguards the American people, saves those in peril and protects the nation from all maritime threats. The service's jurisdiction includes matters of national security, border security and economic prosperity in a complex and evolving maritime environment. As one of the 6 armed services, the US Coast Guard has played a significant role in the defence of the nation. It has supported and fought in every major US war, from the Quasi-War with France in 1798 to the global war on terrorism in the 21st century. To this day, the Coast Guard is unique in that it can operate under the Department of Homeland Security in peacetime and under the Department of the Navy in wartime. And what about Walt Disney, I hear you ask? Well, interestingly, during the Second World War, in May 1942, the Coastal Picket Force, aka the Corsair Fleet, was established. The Corsair Fleet was a group of volunteer yachtsmen and their vessels who patrolled the eastern coast of the US to protect merchant ships from German U-boats. A little known fact is that Walt Disney personally created a special insignia for them, featuring none other than Donald Duck. In a final twist, and with more than just a little semantics here, it's worth noting that the US Navy dates its founding to 1775 with the Continental Navy. However, records show that the latter was completely disbanded in 1785 when the last ship was sold to help with the aforementioned national debt. Consequently, the modern US Navy, in its current form, wasn't founded until 1794. According to the United States Coast Guard, with their founding in 1790, this unique historical trajectory solidifies their status as the oldest and longest continuously operating naval service in the United States. So, which service do you think is the oldest, the Navy or the Coast Guard? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you are interested in all things Coast Guard, you can also check out my video on the US Coast Guard and their unsinkable 47-foot motor lifeboat. See the link in the description and at the end of this video. Have you ever wondered what those small pointed tubes are on the front of aircraft? Chances are you've seen them countless times over the years. Well, they're known as Pitot tubes or Pitot probes. And believe it or not, this device is not a modern invention and was invented by French engineer Henri Pitot way back in the 1700s, and then improved by another French scientist, Henry Darcy, in the 1800s. These tubes play a crucial role in aviation, helping to determine an aircraft's airspeed, Mach number, altitude and altitude trend. Operating within a pitot static system, these pressure-sensitive instruments are essential for aviation safety. Errors in their readings can be extremely hazardous, as information like airspeed is critical for safe flight. In fact, failures in the pitot static system have been linked to incidents and accidents in aviation, such as Air France Flight 447 in 2009, which crashed into the Atlantic Ocean after the pitot tubes became iced over and gave incorrect airspeed data. Beyond aviation, pitot tubes find applications in various other fields. They're used to gauge water speed in boats and measure the flow velocity of liquids, air and gases in industrial settings. So, these unassuming tubes serve as vital components, not only in the skies, but also in diverse industries and maritime activities. Considering the way things are today, it's hard to imagine that anyone could design, build and deliver a jet fighter in less than 5 months, but that's exactly what a top-secret team of designers and engineers did during World War II, when the US Army's Air Tactical Service Command met with the Lockheed Aircraft Corporation to express its dire need for a jet fighter to counter the rapidly growing threat from Germany's own jet, the Messerschmitt Me-262. A young engineer named Clarence Kelly L. Johnson, you may recall we met him earlier in this video, and his hand-picked team of engineers and mechanics delivered the P-80 Shooting Star jet fighter proposal just 1 month later, and shortly after the go-ahead was given for them to commence with the project. In a remarkable turn of speed, Kelly Johnson and his team went on to design and build the P-80, the prototype for the P-80 jet fighter, and delivered it for testing and its first flight on January the 8th, 1944. All of this was accomplished in just 143 days, which was 7 days ahead of schedule, and an achievement that still stands as a world record for a jet fighter. The P-80 was a sleek and fast aircraft, initially powered by a British de Havilland Goblin turbojet engine that gave it a top speed of over 500 miles per hour. Fast forward to late 1944 and the Lockheed P-80 Shooting Star became the first jet fighter used operationally by the US Army Air Forces. Not only was the P-80 fast, it was also capable, armed with 6 .50 caliber machine guns along with the capacity to carry up to 2,000 pounds of bombs. The P-80 was used towards the end of the war in both the European and Pacific theatres, and later went on to serve in the Korean War. Notably, it was also the first jet to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. The P-80 Shooting Star was a symbol of American ingenuity and productivity, to international collaboration, and a testament to the skills and dedication of the people involved. It was the result of a secret and urgent mission that will forever serve as a milestone in the history of aviation. This project also marked the birth of what would become the Skunk Works, with founder Kelly Johnson at its helm. Before we continue, if you're enjoying the video, please can you take a moment to give it a thumbs up and to subscribe to my channel for more videos to come. Your support can really help make a difference. Thank you. If you look at the front of some ships, you'll have undoubtedly noticed a bulb-like shape on or just below the waterline. But what is it and what does it do? Well, it's known as a bulbous bow, and it's a clever design that actually helps the ship move faster, as well as increasing its range, fuel efficiency and stability. A bulbous bow works by changing the way the water flows around the hull of the ship. It does this by reducing drag, the force that opposes the motion of the ship. It also mildly increases the stability and the buoyancy of the forward end of the ship, which in turn helps to reduce pitching in rough water. Bulbous bows are especially useful for large vessels, such as supertankers and cargo ships, or for fast vessels, such as passenger ships. These vessels have high kinetic energy, which depends on their mass and their speed. A bulbous bow that is optimised for their operating speed can improve their fuel efficiency by 12 to 15%. However, bulbous bows are not beneficial for all ships. Smaller crafts such as tugboats and yachts, or slow ships, sailing vessels, and even powerboats do not benefit from having a bulbous bow. In fact, a bulbous bow can create more drag and eddies for these vessels, which has the reverse effect of slowing them down and wasting fuel. Therefore, bulbous bows are most effective when the waterline length of the ship is longer than 15 metres, and when the bulb design is matched to the vessel's operating speed. Although often associated with more modern vessels, the origins of the bulbous bow can be traced back to the late 1800s, with the bulbous bow concept credited to David W. Taylor, a naval architect who served as chief constructor of the United States Navy during the First World War, and who used the concept, known as a bulbous forefoot, in his design of the USS Delaware, which entered service in 1910. Further to this, the modern bulbous bow was developed by Dr. Takeo Inuri at the University of Tokyo during the 1950s and 1960s. Experimentation and refinement slowly improved the geometry of bulbous bows, but they were not widely exploited until the 1980s, when computer modelling techniques enabled researchers at the University of British Columbia to increase their performance to a practical level. Since then, bulbous bows have literally become an integral part of commercial ship design. Have you ever wondered what the holes are for on the sides of certain rifles and gun barrels? Well, it's known as a muzzle brake and is connected to or is a feature integral to the construction of the muzzle or barrel of a firearm or cannon. Simple but effective, the muzzle brake is intended to redirect a portion of propellant gases to counter recoil and unwanted muzzle rise, the force that pushes the shooter and the barrel both backwards and upwards. By reducing these forces, the muzzle brake helps the shooter to aim better and to fire faster. Barrels with an integral muzzle brake are often said to be ported. The concept of a muzzle brake was first introduced for artillery. It was a common feature on many anti-tank guns, especially those mounted on tanks, as it helped to reduce the area needed to take up the strokes of recoil and kickback. Over time, muzzle brakes have also been used for rifles and pistols, especially for competitive shooting. In this case, they are often called compensators, as they compensate for the recoil and muzzle rise of the weapon. But muzzle brakes were not invented overnight. The concept of a muzzle brake had been experimented with for many years prior to its successful implementation. Antoine Tréliard de Beaulieu, general of the French army in the 19th century, invented the first prototype in 1842. A US patent for a recoil obvator was granted in 1871, while an experimental British anti-tank rifle in 1918 also featured a muzzle brake, but was not adopted. This theme of different inventors from different countries playing with the idea of muzzle brakes continued through the 1920s and 30s, and it was not until the 1940s, during the Second World War, that the trial and error finally paid off and muzzle brakes became widespread on both firearms and artillery pieces. Overall, the development of the muzzle brake was a gradual process of evolution that involved experimentation and refinement over many years, leading it to become a highly effective and common feature on many modern-day weapons. Imagine building a ship in just 4 days. Well, that's what the United States did during World War II, when a massive fleet of cargo ships was required to help supply the Allies in Britain. Liberty ships, as they became known, were a class of cargo ship built under the Emergency Shipbuilding Programme. The class was developed to meet British orders for transports to replace ships that had been lost to German U-boats in the ongoing Battle of the Atlantic. Although British in design, they were modified by the Americans to make them simpler and cheaper to build. As a result, they were made of prefabricated sections that were welded together rather than riveted. This reduced the labour and material costs and increased the speed of production, allowing them to be mass-produced on an unprecedented scale. 18 American shipyards built 2,710 Liberty ships between 1941 and 1945, an average of 3 ships every 2 days, easily the largest number of ships ever produced to a single design. As a result, the Liberty ship came to symbolise US wartime industrial output. Despite this, Liberty ships initially had a poor public image, and so to try and ease public opinion, the 27th of September 1941 was designated Liberty Fleet Day, and the first 14 emergency vessels were launched that very same day. The first of these was hull number 14, the SS Patrick Henry, which was built by the Bethlehem Fairfield Shipyard in Baltimore and launched by none other than President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The name Liberty Ship came from his speech that day at the launch ceremony when he quoted Patrick Henry's 1775 speech that finished, "Give me liberty or give me death." Roosevelt said that this new class of ship would bring liberty to Europe, which gave rise to the name Liberty Ship. And indeed, they did bring liberty, and that's not all. They carried everything from food and fuel, tanks and aircraft, troops and munitions, and just about everything else needed. Interestingly, in 1941 the first ships required around 230 days to build, but by 1943 the median production time per ship had dropped to just 39 days, which is pretty amazing. However, this is nothing when compared to the record set during the construction of the SS Robert E. Peary, which was launched on November 12, 1942, just 4 days, 15 hours and 29 minutes after the keel was laid down. The ship went on to be delivered for service on the 15th of November, setting an additional record of 7 days, 14 hours and 32 minutes from laying the keel to delivery. This record speed of construction was a propaganda effort intended to show that the United States could produce ships faster than they could be sunk. Although this publicity stunt was not repeated, it's still an impressive achievement and set a world record for the construction of a ship over 10,000 tons dead weight. In fact, it's a record that stands to this very day, and one which underscores the might and amazing capability of the American shipbuilding industry during a time of war. The ships and their brave crews served with distinction and played a crucial role in the Allied victory. So there you have it, 7 interesting things that you might not have known. Let me know in the comments which is your favourite. Thanks for watching. As always, if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more videos to come. Until the next time, remember to stay adventurous, stay curious and keep exploring with Air, Land, Marine.